As you get to retirement, it hits you that this is the last paycheck you're going to get every 2 weeks on an every 2 week basis, right? And that has been the conversation I've been having with a lot of people as this DRP is fastly approaching. Our team has been talking to people nonstop, but there was a particular conversation yesterday that hit me pretty hard. It's a client of mine. She's been with us now for probably about 8 years or so. And one of the things she was saying was she was just talking about how her paycheck was like, I mean, she's not married, but she was like, my paycheck has been like my husband. Every 2 weeks I could depend on him, you know. And it's helped me to build a fantastic life for my kids. I put my kids through college with this paycheck. I put my grandkids part way through private school with this paycheck. I've seen the world with this paycheck. I've ate at some of the best restaurants with this paycheck. And it's been a big part of her life. And as we watch what's going on in the world right now, we don't know when, as a people, we'll ever be able to get at this amount paychecks like this as a people. And so, one of the things that we've always talked about at Fed Legacy is we want to create generational stories, right? Not just generational wealth. We want to help every one of our clients create generational stories, like managing money and doing IRAs and helping with life insurance, helping with tax planning, all that stuff. Yes, I love to do it. But more, and all of our guys love to do it. But the main thing that we're after, the things we talk about, we're in the office, is what type of stories are we helping clients create with the money that you all have? Because that's the next thing. It's like, all right, how can you take the money that you have and create jobs for people, right? Like we have a client, and we have a couple stories like this, but there's one in particular. We have a client. Her dad was retired from Department of Education about 6 years ago. Her mom was at Department of State. They helped her start a business, when she was in her early 30s, and now the three of them have 4 preschools across the DC area. I think it's 5 now, 5 across area. And we do their life insurance stuff and some of their retirement stuff, and they have 120 employees, right? So this dream that a federal employee working at the State Department and the Department of Education with their child started a business, and that business now has over 120 employees. That type of stuff is what is next for a lot of you all, if you so are interested in creating generational wealth storage for you and your family, because you have the resources, you have the knowledge, and like this is what I'm at. I just wanted to share that story with you all today before we go into this, because just because you're retired, especially if you're DRP and you're getting ready to retire, you have a whole new life on the other side of it, an opportunity to really expand the story that you and your family have. And like that's something, if you ever talk with me or any of my other advisors, that's the conversation that we're really, really interested in, because that's something that I found in Fed Legacy, on that principle of like, let's create generational stories, one family at a time. Because my dad, he tried, he did the best he could. He got us out of Baltimore City, moved to the Prince George's County, put me in private school. It helped me expand my mind around things. And like that's the stuff that we have to do as a people. I wanted to tell you that story before I get into this, because the topic we're going to talk about tonight is a very important topic. We're going to talk about RMDs. RMDs are really, really important topic. We talk about taxes all the time, but I feel like I haven't spent enough time on RMDs. And so what I want to do is I want to go into that. But I just wanted to remind y'all of what we're here really talking about. Yes, we're talking about money, very important stuff. But the challenge I have to everybody that's retired with the DRP, Avera, and all that type of stuff, it's like, what's next? What do you want to do next? Let's brainstorm around that. Yes, we can talk about the money, but let's talk about what purpose that you have, and what thing do you create? Like, what do you want to be remembered for? Like, those are the conversations that now you have the opportunity and the energy and the network to be able to create. So let's do it, right? And so before we do all that, let's just talk about some of this money stuff that's really important, right? So with RMDs, we talk about taxes all the time. And the main thing when it comes to taxes and retirement is going to be your required minimum distribution. So if you ever hear people talk about RMD, it's called required minimum distribution, AKA when the government forces you to start taking some of that money out of your TSP and paying taxes, right? That's what that's called. It's called RMD. Now, the age in which you draw RMDs varies based on when you were born, right? And so Here's how it works. If your birthday is before 1949, your RMD is at 70 and a half. Now, if you're still working, RMDs don't apply, but as soon as you retire, RMDs will apply. If you're born between 49 and 50, it's 72, 51 to 59 is 73, and then 1960 and after, your RMD starts at age 75, right? And what an RMD is this. Once you hit that RMD age, there's a distribution period, right? Where let's say you have, and you could do this right now. You can do the math for yourself right now. If you have, let's say, $100,000, what you would then do is divide you would divide your TSP balance by this number, and that becomes how much RMD you have to take for that year, right? And so every year that amount goes up. And so the reason why RMDs are a problem for a lot of people is because the bigger your TSP balance is, the bigger that taxable income is when you have to do that, when you divide that number, right? And so because you have to make that divide, because you have to divide every year, what that can do is that can start to push you into higher tax brackets. And this is what people run into. So if you have a big TSP balance and your RMDs, you have to take in those RMDs out every year, depending on where you are in your tax bracket, this is why it's important, especially for those on here that have, especially if you have a TSP of, 500,000 or more and you're retiring in your 60s, over time, and what we've seen is over time, that TSP is going to continue to grow. And so as that TSP continues to grow, so does the IRS's portion. And the IRS's portion is going to come from this, right? When you do the math. And so that taxable income that you have to take out every year based on this formula here. And if you ever want to talk about it one-on-one, we can. I know this is, I'm just throwing numbers at you, but the purpose of these webinars is just purely to educate, so you have an awareness around what you're doing and everything that's going on, the stuff that you hear on the news. It's just good to have that overall awareness. But if you want to talk one-on-one, no problem. You just put plan in the chat, and we'll go over your RMD calculations for you and make sure you're doing the right stuff. And so the reason why RMDs are a big topic is because the higher your RMD is, the more likely you would be pushed into a higher tax bracket, right? And RMDs are only done, on traditional TSP money, right? Any money that's in traditional TSP. And so the higher your RMD is, again, that's the required minimum distribution, the higher it can push you up in the tax bracket. Or if you're married and your spouse passes on, and now you're still doing RMDs, but now you're no longer in the married tax bracket, you're in the single tax bracket. That's another thing that could push you in the higher tax bracket. And so that's something that affects folk who have, again, higher TSP balances, because not only are you paying these RMDs, but your income, your TSP balance more than likely is still growing in as you're paying these RMDs. And so it just becomes this thing where the IRS is just, of course you're not losing all your money at all. I don't want to scare you like that, but the IRS is just taking a bigger chunk of your money rather than that money going to your loved ones, right? And so that's, I'd rather give my money to the people that I love than the IRS, right? And so the reason why this particular RMDs are particularly impactful to federal employees like you all on this call is because most people who are in private industry, they have 401k income, meaning they taking a draw off their 401k for income, and then they have Social Security. So they pay less in taxes overall because they don't have as much income. But you all as federal employees, you're getting a pension that's anywhere, in most people's cases, anywhere between $1,500 to $4,000, depending on where you are. And so you got that as income. Then you have your Social Security, which can anywhere between, again, $1,500 to most $3,000, right? Depending on where you are. And so you have both of those two things. And then now all of a sudden you have these RMDs that you're paying. And so what happens with federal employees is it pushes you up into higher tax brackets. And so the way around that, though, and one of the knocks, one of the things that it impacts is the higher your taxable income is for the year, it's almost like a domino effect, right? It affects your Medicare, the IRMA, it affects your Social Security. You're in a high, you pay higher taxes on Social Security, and then your overall income is in a higher tax bracket too. And so that becomes like that domino effect that you want to avoid as federal employees, right? So, and I tell clients this all the time. Anybody on this call that's ever met with me, I tell y'all straight, most federal employees are going to have what, especially if you don't have an income problem. Like if you manage your expenses, you're married, you're married, even if you're not married, but if you are, you have two incomes. But you manage your expenses, your pension pays, your pension and Social Security pay your bills, your TSP's there for in case you need it. You really, only issue you're really going to have in retirement are rich people problems, right? And I say that tongue in cheek, but it's true, right? Rich people are always talking about, how do I reduce the taxes that go to my kids, right? That's their biggest thing. If you sit with them like, well, I don't want my estate tax. I got to do this. I got to do strategies because I want to put the money in a foundation to avoid tax, like all these different things they're doing, but it's to avoid the taxes that are within their wealth pool, right? And so as you as a federal employee, you have a similar issue, right? The issue is you're not going to run out of money. Most people that are private industry, their biggest concern is they have no pension, so all they have is Social Security and their 401k. But that's a very vulnerable place to be, because if the market crashes or something like that, their 401k is subject to losing the money. Or if they're invested safe and inflation's gone crazy, then they're losing buying power too. So, and they're very insecure because they only have those two legs to their stool, right? But as you as a federal employee, you have three. And so for you all, the thing you have to do is start playing offense. You got to start playing offense when it comes to taxes. And the way you play offense when it comes to taxes is something that I talk about all the time. It's Roth conversions. And if you're still working, just making sure you start putting more and more money towards your Roth TSP. Now, Roth TSP came about around 2012. So for people that have been in the government 30 years or so, it's just not something you're used to having an option to do. But the Roth account is really important because you tax the seed and not the harvest, which is important, right? You got 500,000 in your TSP and 200,000 of that's the IRS. That's not cool. But if you're getting paid every 2 weeks and they're taxing $100, $150, $200 on 3,000, 4,000, it's just a little different, right? Especially over time. And then you have compound interest and things like that. And so you avoid all these tax conversations if you start doing, well, the majority of the tax conversations, if you start doing Roth, contributing to your Roth TSP while you're working. And then when you retire, you begin the process of doing Roth conversions, which and what a Roth conversion is you're taking money from your traditional TSP and moving it to a Roth IRA, or money from a Roth IRA and moving it to a moving from a traditional IRA to a Roth IRA. If you do that, you do it on your own terms. And let me go back to this tax bracket. And because when you retire as a federal employee, you're going to be in these lower tax brackets here, right? And if you're in these lower tax brackets, you pay the taxes at this lower amount because your income has dropped. And so when your TSP now continues to grow and it gets to those upper numbers, you're not forced to pay Roth conversions on these distribution numbers, right? You no longer have to divide $1 million by 23 and then paying the Roth conversion like that, because all the money is already taxed. And it saves you, and we run these reports for clients all the time, it saves you hundreds of thousands of dollars if you do it that way, where you start doing the Roth conversions as soon as you retire. You do it with a strategy. Make sure you have a really good tax person. That person, I'll tell you this all the time, the person that did your taxes at H&R Block, or just them type of people, it's cool when you're working, but if you have a decent amount of money in your TSP and you're trying to do Roth conversions, you really want to get with a CPA that's familiar with this. We have people on staff that can help you with it, but get with somebody that understands taxes, because as you're managing taxes in retirement, it really is a couple $100,000 difference in what's going to the IRS versus what's going to your family when you do it right. All right, so just doing the Roth conversions is definitely beneficial because it allows you to satisfy RMDs early and skip that tax. You got to pay the taxes, but skip that big tax, and you can give back more to your family. And so, when it comes to retirement, it's typically 3 asset classes. You have your tax-free bucket, which is your Roth IRA. Grows tax-free. You have your TSP, / traditional IRA, that's tax deferred. So whenever if somebody talks to you about a traditional IRA, that's also going to be tax deferred. You know, you got to get that money out of there and put it into a Roth IRA. And then you have managed money accounts, brokerage accounts. Those are taxable, but you get taxed on the 1099 on those, on the gains on those. But the Roth IRAs, you don't get taxed. If you get a 10% gain on the Roth IRA, you don't have to pay the taxes on the gains, but in the brokerage accounts you do. And we can talk about the differences in those to make sure you're aware of that stuff. So there's two paths. The default path is just do what the IRS wants. They want you to leave your money in traditional IRA. Don't think about it. They gave you more time to satisfy the RMDs, but that really didn't benefit you. It just gave the IRS more time for your money to compound. And so that when it gets to that, when you get to 75 now all of a sudden the number's more than likely going to be bigger, so they can take a bigger chunk. That's all it really is, because most people are just set it and forget it. And so, yeah, they moved it from 71 to 75 now, but that gives them 4 more years of you letting your money stack. And then all of a sudden, boom, now you're getting hit with this bigger number. And so you want to start making that plan early, especially a lot of you all who are DRP and retiring up at the end of the month. You know, a lot of y'all are younger than the average retiree, but you're still in a good place. But you're younger than the average retiree, and so it gives you more time to do the Roth conversions to make sure you satisfy those taxes, and now your money can grow and compound tax free, and you can leave that to your family. And so you just want to be strategic in how you do this. I hope that help you guys understand what required minimum distribution is.